is how to control stress as a leader. And talking about stress, talking about problems, talking about chaos, I think is familiar for us at Echelon Front due to the dynamics that we dealt with in the military. But it's a very common thing that we talk about regardless of the organizations that we work with, because, well, stress is universal. Stress is a little bit unique as everybody encounters it in some way, shape, or form. You think about just the day-to-day grind, what you go through, the amount of stress that you could potentially deal with. You're on the way to work. There's a traffic jam, something that you can't control. We get a little stressed out. You have to deal with your coworkers. You have to deal with people that you run into every single day, with suppliers, with vendors, with the boss, with subordinates. Stress starts to build up. Or we have timelines for projects, for work that we're trying to complete. We get home from work and it doesn't end there because, hey, there's a personal side and professional side to everything that we teach, and stress is no different. You get home, your spouse had a bad day or you had a bad day. Now there's a little stress involved in that dialogue and that interaction. And hey, if you have kids, well, kids are just little balls of stress that just add to what you got going on. Stress is not foreign to any of us. We deal with it in some way, shape, or form every single day. Yet, some people are able to handle stress a little bit better than others. And I'm sure most of us have seen, or at least watched through videos or whatever, somebody dealing with a situation where they're extremely calm and collected. And a lot of times we get asked like, hey, how do I manage my stress? How do I not get overwhelmed? How do I not overreact in situations? So last night, this week, I've been looking through just stress, what it is, the dynamics of it. And there was two definitions that really stood out to me. So talking about how we handle stress, the first definition I want to talk about is, hey, your body's response to a situation that requires attention or action. Stress is your body's response to a situation that requires attention or action. This is our immediate reaction to a situation, which is awesome because foreign, new, uncharted territory, we typically deal with stress very high. I've never seen this situation before. I don't know what to do. It requires attention. It requires action. All the stuff that I talked about earlier, it requires those things. Now, that's just a generic definition, but my favorite definition that I found and what I'm going to elaborate on is stress is your perceived demands of a situation, your perceived demands of a situation outweigh one's available resources. So my perception of what's going on, I don't have the capability or the ability to handle the situation. I don't have the resources able to accomplish the task. And I'll throw that definition in the chat here in a second. But what it means is, hey, we're overwhelmed. I'm in over my head. I don't have the tools to handle A, B, or C. Thus, I get stressed out. Thus, I overreact. I shut down. I get defensive. I attack, whatever the case may be. Now, knowing that, let's talk about the resources. Like, what resources do we have in our toolbox to handle situations? What tools can I bring up to help me deal with stress? That's why we're here. So I want to talk about external and internal resources. So external, I think the biggest external resource we have available to us as human beings, and if you're not new to Echelon Front, you already know where I'm going with this, is relationships, is the people around us. And why that is the case is if JP and I are working on a project, we have something that we're working on, and I get overwhelmed, I'm not able to handle this situation. I have a colleague, I have a friend, I have a mentor that can help me dive through this situation. That is powerful. We all know that, hey, one person accomplishing a task, verse 2, verse 5, verse 10, there is power in numbers. And if you have someone that's a little more level-headed, someone with a better temperament to handle situations, that is a good recipe to handle stress. However, oftentimes when we deal with stress, we feel like we have to face it alone. That it is a sign of weakness to ask another human being, regardless of who they are, to help us with a situation. I mean, honestly, let's think about that statement. I think it's a little bit more weak to withhold asking for help, resisting that help, and not being able to handle a situation. So understand relationships, they are paramount, and having people on your team that are a little more level-headed, that have tools that you don't have, that balance your weaknesses as an individual, is only going to set you up for success when dealing with the stressful nature of life. Now, that's an external resources. The internal resources, those are things that we can build upon as individuals. So one of the big ones that we're going to talk about today is this concept of detachment. So at Echelon Front, we teach the laws of combat, which are cover and move, simple, prioritize, execute, and decentralized command. Under prioritize and execute, there's a tangible tool that we teach called detachment. And what detachment is I have a bunch of stuff going on. I have stress, I have problems, I have chaos, and I take a second, I take a breath, I take a step back to gain some situational awareness, to calm myself in a situation, to see what I need to do with what's in front of me. This is the most powerful tool as a leader you have as an individual. The most powerful tool. It is a leader's best friend, because when I get ramped up, when I get angry, when I get upset, when stress is just level 10, pausing, taking a second will potentially save me from doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing. It is a huge, huge tool. And we're going to talk about, well, how do we actually detach? Because it's easy for me and JP, who teach this, to just tell you guys, hey, when you get stressed out, detach. It's easier for us to say that because we teach this and we've been doing this for a while, but what does that actually mean? How do I detach? How do I recognize, like, the stuff has hit the fan? I'm panicking. I don't know what to do. I'm over my head. I can't handle the situation. How do we recognize that so we can take that step back, so we can gather some situational awareness on what we have going on? So the first thing I'll say is, hey, when it comes to detachment, when it comes to stress, you have to identify what your red flags are as an individual. Now, red flags, what those are signs that tell you, hey, you're getting ramped up. Hey, you are level 9 out of 10. These signs look different for everybody. My signs for being stressed out versus JP's, they look a little different. We have physical and mental signs. Let's talk about the physical ones. These are a little bit more universal amongst an audience, amongst the population. Physical signs when you're getting ramped up, when you're getting stressed out, are increased heart rate. So right now, me speaking on this presentation, I can look at my watch and I see that, hey, my heart rate's at 150. I'm getting a little ramped up. And that's not really due to stress. That's just because I like talking about this stuff. But when you feel your heart rate increasing, that's a telltale sign that, hey, you need to calm down. You need to take a second, slow down your breathing, catch your breath, because an increased heart rate is going to delay what you're able to do down the road. So increased heart rate's number one. There's a bunch of stuff that can go into this as well. So heart rate, hey, maybe when you get stressed out, when you get frustrated, you get that big vein in the neck, or you get a little flustered. You get the blotchiness, which I can see JP is about to laugh because that's me. When I'm uncomfortable, when I'm in a stressful situation, my neck gets a little blotchy. I get red. I start to clench my fist. Maybe I grip my teeth. All those are things which tell us, like, hey, stop. Take a second before you do something you shouldn't do. That's what detachment is. This looks different for everybody. Now, the hard part about recognizing what your red flags are, those physical ones are, it's really hard for us as an individual to recognize that we do that. And why that is the case is, well, we all have precious little egos that tell us, hey, you know what? You weren't really that mad. Your heart rate wasn't really that. You were pretty calm in that situation. Hey, you didn't talk that much. You didn't command the entire scenario. That's what our ego tells us. It protects us from seeming weak or not able to handle a situation. So we have to be careful with that, because recognizing those red flags is step one in being able to detach. So I talked about physical. Now the mental ones, the mental red flags, those are a little harder to talk about, a little harder for us to understand. So mental red flags, again, they're going to be different for everybody. Mental flags are going to be you shut down. So the stuff has hit the fan, deadline is due in 2 hours. I'm overwhelmed. I have 15 priorities and I shut down. I don't know what to do. And I stay in myself. I don't ask for help. I don't say anything. I don't do anything. I'm going to wait to be told what to do. So that's a big one. Additionally, maybe you have a hard time asking for help. That's my biggest red flag. My biggest red flag is when I'm uncomfortable, when I can't handle a situation, I have an inability to ask for help. So when that thought passes my mind, it's in my train of thought, hey, maybe I should ask JP for help. And I start to say no. Right then and there, no, hey, stop, detach. That is actually the right thing to do. So these mental cues, these mental red flags, these physical red flags, that's step one. You have to know what those are. Now, again, I said ego is going to stop you from seeing those. So I encourage you, if you have people on your team, people you have close relationships with, better yet, people that know you best, your spouse, your kids, your boss, I would urge you to ask the question on, hey, when things get chaotic around here, when there's a lot of problems around us, hey, how did I handle that situation? Hey, JP, we just went on this last mission, man. It was crazy. We were getting shot at from 3 different sides. Hey, I know we're back in the planning space now and we're safe here. Hey, could you just let me know from your perspective, how did you see me respond in that situation? Because what I think I did versus what I actually did from an outsider's perspective, usually those are a little different. In my head, I can be like, I freaking crushed that. I did everything I should have done. I told my leadership everything they needed to know. I was early on my timeline. When in reality, what JP saw, my boss, what Justin saw as my peer are three different things. So aligning on the perspectives around you, that is crucial to identifying, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm not as calm, cool, and collected in a chaotic situation. So those red flags, those are absolutely paramount in knowing what's going on. Additionally, so detachment, red flags are number one. There are three things you should constantly detach from in a stressful situation. So the first one is you have to detach from your ego. We just talked about ego with red flags. We have to detach from our ego because your ego will typically lie to you about the given situation. It'll either tell you, hey, you can handle this situation when you really can't all by yourself. Your ego will tell you that, hey, no matter what JP says, you're right, they're wrong. Sorry, I'm right, he's wrong, whatever it is. So ego, we have to detach from our ego, gain some perspective, gain some situational around us before we try to handle the stressful situation. So ego is number one. Now, the second one is perspective. We already talked about perspective. When I'm stressed out, when there are problems, which we all encounter problems in some form of magnitude, I have to gain perspective. As JP likes to say, hey, your perspective is flawed. What I see looking into this screen looks a little different what JP sees, which is crazy because we're looking at the same thing. But how I perceive things and how JP perceives things is totally different. Perspective is a hell of a thing. It's two or more people looking at the same thing, but thinking two different mindsets about what is going on. So when I'm stressed out, I want to gain perspective. And the reason why is I can ask JP, hey man, like, is this really as bad as it is? And JP, who's, solidified in his position, has more tools on his toolbox, is like, hey, you know what? This isn't that bad. And my stress level starts to drop due to that relationship that I have, tying it all the way back to number one. So perspective is huge. Don't fall on your own perspective because it's flawed. Now, the last one, and typically the biggest thing that attributes to being stressed out is our emotions. We have to detach from our emotions because who here makes really good emotional decisions? We don't do it. We don't do it ever. Now, I'm not saying be void of emotions. I'm not saying be a human robot. And when people are sad, you're like, hey, cool, I'm going to go do something else. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying don't let your emotions get heightened to a point where you can't handle a situation. So when we say detach from your emotions, when I start to get upset, when I start to get angry, when I start to get flustered, I stop, I take a second, and I recognize, hey, this isn't a logical thought. This isn't a rational thought. This is irrational because I'm emotional right now. So I stop, I take my emotions, I try to take my emotions out of that decision-making process so that I can do what I need to do and not what I want to do. Because when there's stress, when there's issues, when there's chaos and you're stressed out, your emotions are going to drive you to do what you want to do, not what you need to do. What you need to do is take a second. What you need to do is pause. What you need to do is lean on somebody else to handle the situation. Want versus need are two very different things. Now, I talked about internal resources, detachment being the first one because, well, that's what we teach at Echelon Front. The other resources I want to talk about are knowledge, skills, and experience. Knowledge and skills, they can go hand in hand. And what I mean by that is, hey, everybody here, for the most part, is different job field, different day-to-day grind, different family dynamic, different relationship dynamic. And the more tools you have on your tool belt to handle a situation, the better off you're going to be. The worst time to learn a new skill, is when you actually need it. That's the worst time. So if I understand the complexities of, the Marine Corps, which I was a former Marine, I need to understand a lot of the what ifs around what's going on. Hey, if we go on this patrol, this potentially could happen. And I play through that. I walk through that. I gain knowledge. I read books. I ask people. I gain experience so that when I do handle that what if scenario, I'm prepared. If I'm not prepared, that goes back to the definition I talked about. My perceived demand of the situation outweighs my resources because I don't have the tools in my tool belt to handle the situation. Therefore, my stress level rises and I'm unable to handle the situation. So I would encourage you, whatever you're going through right now, whether it's at work or at home, to work through and talk through and think about, hey, when this happens, what potentially can happen? Talk through contingencies, because if you can think about contingencies, if you have them mapped out, when things don't go according to plan, which they typically don't, you already have a plan in place. Therefore, that's going to mitigate the stress involved when things do go wrong. Now, experience. This is the last thing I'll talk about, and then I'll pass it over to JP. If you can, and this is the hard one, this is the hardest part for a lot of people. If you can put yourself, which people aren't going to like this, put yourself in stressful situations, you will gain experience on how to handle those. And a lot of people ask, well, how do I put myself in a stressful situation? I don't want to do that. It doesn't sound like fun. You don't have to go level 10 crazy berserker in the stressful situation in order to gather some learning points. What I'm saying is, if you can realistically train in a controlled environment and throw some stressors, throw in some worst case scenarios, throw in some, hey, you don't have the resources able to do your job. You have a controlled environment where people are stressed out, and you can learn from that, because from a training environment, you can debrief and talk about it. Hey, JP, what I saw, man, when you got flustered, man, you went crazy. You were super direct. You were telling everybody what to do. And now he's aware that he does that in that situation. Awareness is critical. Awareness will allow you to see those red flags, which will allow you to detach, which will allow you to mitigate your stress level in those situations. Now, that's going to look different for everybody. What stressful training looks like for a lineman versus someone in the tech field versus somebody on a police department, that looks different. As much as it looks different, a stressful situation really can be anything, right? I could put a stressful situation on a Zoom presentation to where I turn off my video, or I talk through this at the beginning. Hey, your video is not going to work. What are you going to do? Hey, the chat box doesn't work, which I've seen in the chat was the case at the very beginning. How do I handle that situation? That's going to increase a little bit of stress, and I can walk through how to do that. So regardless of the organization, hey, stress is stress. If you can find a situation and use the variables from your organization, you can learn how to handle those when you face them down the road. Now, something that we do at Echelon Front is we put people in stressful situations. So we have a lot of stuff at Echelon Front. We have webinars such as this. We have the muster where Jocko and Leif and JP, a 2-day leadership conference where you're just gaining the information that we teach. Now we have the hands-on form at Echelon Front. We call it our field training exercise. And our goal in the field training exercise department is to stress you out. It's for you to go meet us in Dallas. We're going to throw you in a bunch of military scenarios, which not a lot of people have a baseline in, something extremely foreign, and we're going to stress you out. We're going to add a lot of chaos. We're going to add a lot of problems. We're going to add a lot of noise. And noise is people yelling, smoke grenades, laser tag systems, a lot of craziness. And a lot of people, when they hear Echelon Front talk about this FTX, it scares them. We just use the laser tag system. We use military scenarios because that's what we know. That's what we've been through. It doesn't matter if we put you through laser tag scenarios or had you dig a trench or had you work on a computer. We can add some stress. And so through our FTX program, what we do is we stress people out and we talk about what happens when people get stressed out. We show people the mirror. I can tell Justin, hey, Justin, man, hey, during that planning process, what I saw from my detached perspective is, man, you controlled the entire thing. And when you went out on the run and I killed you off, meaning you couldn't take part in the run, the plan completely failed. The team didn't know what to do because you weren't there at the tip of the spear showing them what to do. And then what we do is we tie it back to what you do professionally. Hey, Justin, as someone that owns a gym, man, hey, do you plan everything every single day for all your clients? Do you control all of that? Hey, what happens when you're not there? What happens if you have an emergency at home with your girlfriend? Like, what do you do, man? And so what's unique about the FTX program is you have a bunch of people from all walks of life, typically non-military people. We throw them into military scenarios. We stress them out and we teach them the power of detachment in real time. People learn in different ways. People learn by reading a book. People learn by listening to JP. People learn by hands-on practical application. So I would say, to sum this up, if you're a person that gets stressed out a lot, I could tell you, you probably have a limited amount of resources at your disposal, meaning you don't have people in your life that can help you navigate it. You don't have experience in stressful situations. You don't have knowledge. You don't have the skills to handle those. And right there, that's your answer. Your answer is right there. Skills, knowledge, experience. That is how you navigate. That is how you control stress as a leader. And with that, I will pass it off to Sir JP Dinnell.
What's up, y'all? Hey, so I'm just gonna add a few things. What Cody put out was awesome. I appreciate it. I'm gonna quickly scan the Q&A box, and so there's a Q&A box and there's a webinar chat box. So Cody and I and Justin, we're gonna filter through those. I know we had a question initially from Jason, and then Kurt put one in the webinar chat box. And then Julian Cody asked you, what was the third thing to detach from? Ego, emotions, and then let's see. And then we have a question from Annette, or Annette. Then someone said perspective at the very bottom for Julian. So awesome. A little cover and move from the anonymous attendee. I like it. Hey, the only thing I would add to what Cody was saying is just stress is actually a good thing. And, people have like demonized stress about like, oh, you're going to die early from all this stress in your life. Well, I mean, yeah, if your life was only filled with stress, yeah, maybe. But like, let's look at your life as a whole. Like, what all are you actually doing with your life, with the time that you have with your colleagues, your family, your friends, your community? And we have to understand that, like, as business professionals, which most of the people on these are business professionals, or I still consider some, even if you're not like an executive leader or a CEO or a president or vice president of a company, I consider you a business professional if you're actively in a leadership position or pursuing a leadership position, meaning you could be brand new to your organization, literally brand new, come on the team this week and actively be finding ways to make things better at that organization. To me, you're a business professional because you realize that leadership actually has nothing to do with your title. Your title doesn't make you a leader. Your ability to build relationships and influence the people around you, to handle stress like Cody was talking about, to detach from your emotions, that's what makes you a leader. That's what makes you a business professional. That's what makes you a professional in life, is understanding and learning how to detach from your emotions so that you can actually make the right call. I know somebody put it in, I don't know, one of those two chat boxes, relax, look around and make a call. That is something that Jocko taught us when we were doing our workup and tasking a bruiser so that we could understand how to make the right calls in chaotic and stressful situations. And if we can understand and remember that detachment is a superpower, it gives us the advantage. It gives you the advantage. I travel a lot, 2 to 3, sometimes 4 different cities a week working for Echelon Front, which I love what I get to do. And that amount of travel can start to become stressful. There's a lot of wear and tear on the body, a lot of like 2 to 3, sometimes 4 hours of sleep because delayed flights, or you're having to go to the next city and there's a delay and then it get canceled. And you realize, oh, guess what? At Echelon Front, we don't miss events. So instead of being like the majority of the other companies going, oh, can't control the weather, I'm going to sit here in the city until I get a next flight. You know what we do at Echelon Front? We rent a car and drive 14 hours straight to get to our event. And we show up 30 minutes before we're supposed to be there. And we put some cold water on our face. We shave, we put on a new polo, and we show up without the client knowing. And I know Cody's done that a few times. I've done that a few handfuls of times. I know Jocko's done it. I know almost everybody at Echelon Front has had to do that, because at the end of the day, you can make excuses or you can make things happen. You can't do both. And when you can understand how to control your emotions and detach from a stressful environment, it gives you the advantage. Because while everybody else is freaking out at the airport, you know what we do at Echelon Front? We use technology to our advantage, and we get on our phones and we say, oh, cool, this flight is delayed. Let me open up the app. Let me click on inbound flight. Oh, it's still in that other city. It hasn't even left yet. What's the probability that it gets here? And oh, oh, those crews are probably going to be timed out. Let me go talk to the counter and say, hey, do you know if there's a new crew standing by for when this plane comes in? Because I know they're going to be timed out. And they're like, I don't think there is. You know what that tells me they're doing for that flight? Canceling it. They're going to cancel it. And so what I do is I take preemptive ownership, and I understand that if I'm freaking out, it does nothing to help. So I take preemptive ownership. I reach out to ops team. I reach out to Justin. I reach out to Codey, whoever that can help out and say, hey, here's what's going on. Can you make it to this gig? Yes or no? Codey's like, yep, I got it. I'm on my way. Cool. Now Codey covers down for me because maybe I wasn't going to be able to make it. Or we go the rental car route and we drive 10, 12, 14 hours straight through to get to that event. And we're not stressed out because for us, this is work. This is what we do. And we teach people how to work in stressful environments. Could you imagine us freaking out in the airport or, treating a gate agent crappy or the rental car or the hotel like crap? No, we treat people with respect because we're not stressed out. When people are stressed out, they treat other people badly because they're not in control of their emotions. If they're logical, do you think they would be treating people like that? No, that's not what a logical person does. That's what an emotional person does. And so the next time you're treating your coworker, a peer, your spouse, your kids, a random person at the airport who has no control over what's actually happening to your flight, when you're treating them poorly, that's your red flag indicator that you're so stressed out, you're not able to control your emotions. And so the more we can put ourselves in stressful situations with an awareness of what's happening, it gives us more intel on who we are as individuals and who we are as leaders, so that we can actually make the right calls. We can help out our team. We can help out the people around us because that's what we're trying to do. That's what you're supposed to do as a leader. It's to lead. And as a human, your job is to also help lead the people around you, give people guidance, help them out. That's what we're supposed to do. And if you're stressed out, you're not going to be able to do that. And that's what I love about the FTXs, the field training exercises that we run. We call it the Leadership Lab. I think we should change the name to the Leadership Lab, Codey, because that's exactly what we're doing out there. It's a laboratory for these leadership principles so that real time you can feel them, you can see them, you can hear them. Like, remember in lab in high school and junior high where those were the most fun days because you didn't have to be in the book. You didn't have to be sitting there watching the PowerPoint presentation. Well, I mean, Codey probably had PowerPoint presentation. He's a young gun, but for the rest of us, we had the old school projector that, the thing would and move the thing across the front and they'd have to erase it and write some new stuff on there. We didn't have to do any of that because we got to be hands-on. And guess what people like to do? They like to be hands-on because it's just the way we're built and designed, but that's the way we learn the best. And so if we can put ourselves in situations where we're doing hands-on training, it will help us progress as an individual with our skill sets, and it helps us progress as a leader. And that's what we see in the FTXs, the Leadership Lab that we run at Echelon Front. We get to watch from a detached perspective as an instructor of what people are doing in a stressful environment. And what's cool about a stressful environment, you can't hide from who you are. Who you are comes out no matter what. It doesn't matter. You can't fake the funk, as they say, because who you are is going to come out. And that's good because the good and bad traits that you have will come out in those controlled training environments so that you can learn. You can learn who you are. And I know we have a few attendees on here that have actually been through our FTXs. I got a text message at the beginning of it from one of our buddies, Scott, who he's been through the training with his wife. He actually came through a second time. His son, who's now working the company with him, has come through. They have sent multiple employees through the training because they understand the value of the stress-induced scenario-based leadership training for their growth. And I can tell you, I'm not going to disclose anything, but I can tell you the growth of them as individuals and as humans, as leaders, and their business has been incredible. It's been an amazing return on their investment which I know that to be true. Scott tells me that all the time. But here's why it's been a great investment for his business. Because he's showing his people that he cares. He's showing his people that he cares. And Scott and his wife and his son are being able to detach at a greater ability and look strategically at their business and not get sucked into the stresses. Like, a lot of people are stressed out right now. But I also know a lot of our clients that aren't stressed out because they know that leadership is the solution to any problem that's happening out there. So we have to be aware that life gives us the opportunity to train. And if we're not doing an evaluation of ourselves, our team, and the environment that we're in, we're missing opportunities for growth and development. And that's what we need to be looking at. Stress gives you growth and development. Justin, personal trainer. Time under tension, stress of lifting weights, of doing sprints, of cardio, growth and development. If you don't do those things, you're not going to progress with your health. You're not going to progress as an athlete. And so we have to understand that we were designed this way for a reason. Stress is a good thing when you are able to control it and you use it to your advantage. It reminds me of a story that we tell, Codey, about dictating the situation. The stress is there no matter what. It doesn't matter. Life is going to just cause stress and chaos. Like we know complacency is going to creep in. The stress is going to be there. So why don't we take control over that? And instead of allowing the stress to dictate what happens to us, we dictate the situation by taking control over the environment. We take control over that stress by doing an evaluation and saying, all right, cool. This is what's going on right now. What can I learn from this? Where have I progressed as a leader? Where did I fail? Did I lose my temper earlier when I shouldn't have? Okay, cool. What caused that? Let me reverse engineer this whole situation so that I can figure out what didn't work and so that I can come back as a better leader in the future. So just some random thoughts that I have. Codey, a lot of really good information. Thank you for kicking it off with that. I know we have another 22 and a half minutes on this webinar. I know we have some questions. I guess, Codey, we can go to that first one in the Q&A box, and then we'll jump over that other one in the webinar chat box, and then we'll just filter back and forth. Hey, for those of you that normally do our trainings on Zoom, I know usually we can all see each other. We can say, hey, unmute yourself. Let's talk. I don't think we have that ability on here. I apologize. We were just trying to be able to host as many people for the webinar as possible. But whatever questions you guys have in there, Codey and I are going to get to those in a second. So first one, Codey, let's go ahead. And I believe it was Jason Emmanuel. How do you recommend balancing relationship as an external resource versus ownership? Example, coworkers don't support and say you should own this and the outcome. Do you need a little more info from Jason? I mean, we can answer it based off of how we read that.
Yes, sir. And JP, for awareness, so I just got kicked out of Zoom, so I don't see any of the questions. So that's you're going to have to just do what you just did. Speaking of stress, but hey, you know what? Cool. Cover move, JP's got it covered. I did see that question. I already wrote down some notes. So balancing using relationships and ownership. I ask for help and someone's like, hey, just it's on you. You need to figure it out. The big glaring red flag initially right away is that the end of that statement. If I ask JP for help and he's like, dude, just go handle it yourself. How's that relationship? I would argue that if on a scale of 1 to 10, it's not good. So that's where you initially have to start. Where people get in trouble on leaning on other people is it never ends. I constantly like, hey, JP, I need this. And then 2 days later, hey, JP, man, I'm stressed out. I need this. And then again, hey, JP, I need this. If I'm constantly just using JP and I'm never able to handle the situation by myself, then it's not balanced. So where the balance comes in on utilizing relationships versus ownership is, hey, every time I have to ask JP is because of A, I take ownership in being able to do A by myself. So maybe it's, let me use a hypothetical here. Maybe, so here at Echelon Front, maybe I have a hard time in connecting to the younger generations. And JP is really good at that. So, hey, man, JP on Friday, man, I got this client. It's a bunch of high schoolers. Dude, you've been doing this way longer than I. Hey, can you help me out? That's my first thing. Me and JP have a good relationship. in this scenario. He's my boss. He's like, cool, man, I can do that for you. And we go away. 2 weeks go by and I asked him the same question. Hey man, crazy. High school went pretty good. Thanks for your guidance. I'm going back again. I don't think I'm prepared. Hey, can you help me out? And it goes through again. And maybe JP is a little flustered. Like, well, I already helped you out before. Like you have the steps and able to do this. Maybe he doesn't say anything. We fast forward another 2 weeks and I go back to JP again. I'm like, hey man, like, dude, crazy. Another high school group. And he's like, well, man, I've already helped you out twice. Like I have a bunch of priorities. Like I'm trying to get this done, this done, this done. Like, hey, you're more than capable to do this. And I'm not able to do that. So now I'm leveraging my relationship and not actually solving the problem. So that's when I am out of balance. So if you're constantly leaning on people and they're stating, hey, go figure it out by yourself, understand fixing a relationship is step one. Additionally, whenever you lean on other people, take ownership on, hey, next time, or my goal is to be able to do this by myself down the road. That should be the goal. So next time I go talk to a high school group, I'd be like, hey, JP, man, last Friday, I went and talked to a high school group, and from your guidance, man, on teach me what to do, I have the tools and I'm able to do this. Because now in this scenario, JP as my boss, he doesn't have to worry about helping me in this situation. Now he can potentially help me somewhere else, or better yet, help somebody else on my team or help the organization as a whole. So don't constantly use another person. If you're going to leverage the relationship to help you out, make sure it's not a ever-ending thing. Make sure there's an end state. I'm going to take ownership. I'm going to have the tools. I'm going to gain the knowledge. I'm going to gain the experience so I can do this by myself down the road. If your intent is just to use people so you don't have to do something because you feel you're not capable, it just means you're not putting in the work to do it yourself down the road. So those would be my two things right there. Work on the relationship, take ownership, and gaining the tools to be able to handle that situation next time you face it.
Awesome. Hey, Codey, I copied and pasted and put some questions in the webinar chat. And Justin is also doing the same thing. The next one, sorry. This is from Annette. How can you handle the stress of other persons when they can't think rationally? Next to invite them to this course. Yeah, that's I like that idea. That's we can all laugh about that, but it's similar to, hey, how do I get somebody to read Extreme Ownership? Well, we always tell them that you should not say, hey, you should read this book about being a better leader. Because again, your perspective is flawed and they could take it the wrong way. But Codey, what do you got on that, bud?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Trying to force this, it's not a good idea. So Annette 938. Okay. So let's say I'm going to use peers here because unfortunately, not enough context. I'm just going to assume that we're talking about a peer situation, or even if it's a subordinate or boss. Actually, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go back. It doesn't matter whether this is a boss, peer, subordinate, your spouse, your kids, somebody on my team. I'm going to use JP. JP's on my team in some capacity, and he gets overwhelmed and he can't think rationally. He explodes. He goes direct. He shuts down, whatever the case may be. If I recognize that, the worst thing I can do is, hey, JP, next time, man, you need to calm down. Hey, calm down. You're freaking out. That's just going to make the situation worse. If you ever told your spouse to calm down, I think we're all on the same page. Not a good idea. So don't do that. That is a direct way. There's a couple other questions which we'll get to, which talk about, hey, being direct. You have to fight that. You need to fight telling someone, hey, JP, you suck at making decisions. Hey, JP, you get really stressed out. Like that's the worst thing you can say. So what I would challenge you to do is if I recognize somebody on my team gets stressed out easily, what I'm going to do as somebody who cares about them, regardless of their position, is I'm going to take stuff off their plate to lower that level of stress that they're dealing with. So maybe JP gets really stressed out with the logistics involved in an event. So let's say for an FTX, we have to book like 10 people's travels, the hotels and all. He gets stressed out because it's 10 people. It's a lot of stuff. And JP, who's a husband and has kids and a life, it's a lot that goes into it. So if I recognize that JP typically gets stressed out, and how I recognize that is due to the day-to-day conversation, JP calls me like, hey man, I need this. Hey man, I need this. Hey, what's going on with this flight? And I sense that and I could feel that. And due to the relationship, you know what I do? I implement cover and move. Oh, hey, JP's getting stressed out about this. Cool. Hey, JP, I got it. Hey, flight's already done. I took care of that for you. Is JP going to be stressed out about a situation that's already taken care of? No, absolutely not. The hard part about this is a lot of people will say, well, that just means I'm doing the work for them. If that is the case, understand that you are thinking about this the wrong way. Cover and move is about sacrificing, is about putting other people in front of you for the common goal. So it's not that I'm doing JP's job. It's that our mission is being accomplished. And hey, do I have to put a little more effort in? Absolutely. Now, my goal, if this is somebody on my team, is to have the conversation to show him that, hey, we need to get this taken care of. And maybe me taking ownership first and foremost is by showing him or taking it off his plate. Hey, I'm going to do this for you. And then down the road, I can show him, hey, this isn't as stressful as you think it is, man. Like, hey, all it is, I actually built a template. I created an SOP, which makes this a lot easier. So I'm giving him a tool to lower his level of stress. So again, this is an indirect way. This is you, unfortunately, you doing the work. Because at the end of the day, trying to change somebody else versus actually putting in some action in yourself, those are two very different things. It's hard to control another human being. So I'm going to do some legwork. I'm going to take stuff off his plate. I'm going to utilize cover and move. And hey, if I have a great relationship with him, you know what I actually can have is a conversation the right way. I'm going to utilize tact, tone, delivery, and timing. Hey, JP, man. Hey, I think I'm missing something here. I asked some earnest questions. Hey, man, I've noticed like the last 6 months, every time we're booking travel, man, like you get really overwhelmed. Like, is there something that I am not doing? I'm taking ownership. Is there something that I can do to make your job easier? Do you need more support? Do you need another person on your team? Hey, can I pass this off to our travel coordinator who can do this for you? So you know what I'm doing? I'm not letting JP handle this by himself, because when people are alone, when they don't have people that go to bat for them, when they don't have people that cover them, they get stressed out because they are by themselves trying to handle problems. So what I do, regardless if it's a peer, boss, subordinate, spouse, or kids, is I'm going to do some work. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to take stuff on my plate. I'm going to implement some SOPs. I'm going to take ownership, because last thing I want to do is have JP go on by himself, get stressed out, and fail his mission. Because, hey, maybe JP doesn't work for me. Maybe JP's in another department. But if JP fails in my organization, you know who else fails? I do. And that is why cover and move solves this problem.
Awesome. Thank you, Codey. Rodrigo, it's a question. Given that it's been 2.5 years with no vacations at my new job and more than 4 years without vacations, when and how would you recommend approaching the big boss to ask for some time off? Rodrigo, this is a great question. One, I would ask myself, if I were you, I would ask myself, what's my relationship like with my boss? And if you have a good relationship with your boss and you've been performing, and as Codey says, you've been winning for your boss, that's the best way to create influence with your leadership, is to go out and win. Hey, you have a hard time building a relationship with your boss? Go get some wins, go perform, go do the work. And so assuming that you have a good relationship and assuming that you've been out there winning, I would go and sit down with your boss and explain to them how you have failed to communicate to them sooner of the importance of a vacation. And, and that's one of the things is, like, we all assume that our bosses should recognize these things, and they should. However, if I'm putting myself in your position, it's on you to take ownership over that and also communicate it to your boss. And so for me personally, vacations stress me out. Like the thought of taking a week or a week and a half off of work, like I don't like it. I don't, now I do them occasionally with my family because my wife likes them and my wife needs them and my kids like them and my kids need them. I don't enjoy it. I still work while I'm on vacation. I bring my Echelon Front polo with me just in case I get a call and need to go to a gig, which I've had to do in the middle of vacations before, but cover and move like Codey is talking about. So for me personally, I don't like to take vacations. And guess what? My leadership team knows that. And so if I don't take any vacations, they're not going to say anything. However, when I need to take time off to prioritize, moving into a new house with my wife, or taking time off to, take care of my wife after surgery, I don't mind going to my leadership and saying, hey, I'm going to mark off this week on the calendar. I can take calls, I can do virtual things, but I can't travel. because my wife is having surgery and I need to be there to take care of her. And then like last night, we got the keys to our new house. We just bought a house, first house, and we got the keys last night. And, we're moving this weekend and next week. And I had on the calendar, not available, moving. And I let my leadership know. And that's cool. Like that's part of it. Like I'm able to do this because I can take an hour in the middle of the workday or the moving day to sit and talk, but I'm not traveling and it doesn't impact my family in a negative way. So I was able to communicate that to my leadership. I look at that as if I'm going to ask for time off, that's a withdrawal. That's the way I look at it. Okay. If I'm going to ask for time off, that's a withdrawal. And I let my leadership know ahead of time. I don't just randomly, mark time off or, oh yeah, hey, I'm on a vacation right now. No, my leadership knows about that because I communicate it to Jamie, Jocko, Leif about that ahead of time and Dave, so that we have alignment as, our two departments that interact with each other. And then I let Codey know because Codey works with me and he's covering everything when I'm not available. And then now that Justin's on the team and he's working directly to support Codey and I make sure Justin knows. And as long as like up and down, they understand and we have alignment, it's literally no factor. It's no factor because I've been putting in those deposits, and they know if I'm asking for time off, like, it's not something that I abuse. And bro, you've been working for 2.5 years without a vacation. You need to go to your leadership and let's say I'm going to role play this. Like I'm you, Rodrigo, and Codey is my boss. I'm going to sit down and say, hey, Codey, do you have about 5 minutes that I could sit and talk to you about something? I want to make sure he has the time to listen. And when I ask my boss, do you have time to talk? And he says, yeah, absolutely. I say, oh, cool. And then I start the conversation. If he says, hey, I'm actually tight for time right now, what's going on? Because that's what most good bosses will do. They're like, well, I'm tight for time. What's going on? I don't even tell them because they don't have the time for the actual conversation. I don't want to put that on the radar. I don't want to add that stress to their plate. So I say, hey, it's not a big deal. When do you have 5 minutes that I can sit down and talk with you, or we can jump on a phone call? And Codey says, hey, Friday at 12:30, I get off this webinar. I have 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever you need. But I say, cool, I'm going to put it on the calendar. So then I send him a calendar invite to make sure we have alignment. And he knows this conversation is what, Rodrigo, when I do that? It's serious. He's going to know that it's an important conversation to me, which it is. And so now when Codey and I sit down and he's like, hey, what's going on? I say, hey, boss, I just want to appreciate the last 2.5 years that you've given me to work here. I love my job. I love being here. One of the things I realized is I actually haven't taken any time off. And I was wondering if it was cool if I was able to take a week or two off. I just got to take care of some stuff with my wife. We want to go on a little vacation. We need to do some stuff around the house, whatever it is, whatever you want to do with that time off, it doesn't matter. But I'm letting Codey know what I'm going to do and why it's important to me. Because if Codey and I have a good relationship, do you think the things that matter to me matter to him? Absolutely. Like 100%, because we have a good relationship. So I'm going to let him know, hey, I was wondering if I could take a week off. And, I want to take a vacation with my family. I haven't done it with them in over 4 years. So even at my old job, I didn't take time off for a vacation. I haven't done it the last 2.5 years. And I was wondering if that's something that would be okay. And I'm going to sit and I'm going to listen to what Codey has to say. And if Codey's like, hey, man, right now is kind of a bad time because we're behind on these projects. And, I need all hands for the next, 3 months to get these projects done. I'm going to say, cool, awesome. Hey, you know what? This is on me. I should have said something last year. I got distracted with all the work that we have going on. Hey, when we get done with these projects, are you good with me blocking off a week or two on the tail end for me to take some time off with my family? I mean, so if I'm saying these things, they're all reasonable requests. And I'm not even going into I know somebody in HR on here is like having an aneurysm of like somebody working for 2.5 years and not taking time off, and that's illegal. I get it. I agree with you. But I'm just saying, there's ways to have these professional conversations to where I'm maintaining that relationship. That's what I'm thinking about, is how do I maintain a relationship with my boss while asking for some time off that you well deserve. You well deserve that time off, Rodrigo. So subordinate your ego, go build that relationship, and let us know how it works, man. Codey, anything to add to that, buddy?
It sounds like this hypothetical scenario that JP is stating, but I just took a vacation with my wife a couple of weeks ago. It was the first one I've taken here at Echelon Front in 5 years. And everything that JP said is exactly what he has taught me to do and what I did in the situation. Me and my wife have never taken a vacation by ourselves. We have 4 young kids, 5-year-old, 4-year-old, 3-year-old, and 1-year-old, and not once have we ever had time to ourselves. And so I approached JP the same way due to the good relationship and recognizing that, hey, there's a lull on our calendar for a weekend. I was like, hey, man, do you mind if I step away for, a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? And what do you think he said? He's like, absolutely. Better yet, cover move relationship. He's like, hey, what do you need me to do while you're gone? This isn't hypothetical. JP's my boss. JP's asking me what he can do while I'm gone. So the relationship, as you can see, there's a common theme in a lot of these questions here. It's cover, move, it's relationship. So I appreciate JP using this hypothetical scenario. But JP, there's a good one here.
This is a legitimate question from Rodrigo, I promise.
Yeah, okay. There's a question in the chat box. You posted it, 940 from John. This is an awesome one. We're talking about being direct. JP's one of the most aggressive people I know, so I'd love his thoughts on this, and I'll add my thoughts. From John, I am a former Secret Service. I work at CISL for the Brits, who all believe I am a killer brute knuckle dragger. I communicate respectfully and directly, but they consider direct statements as scary. I've tried to soften my approach, but I can't speak tea and crumpets. Any thoughts?
Oh, John. So this is why I'm laughing. I've worked with the Secret Service. I've trained with you guys. You guys are awesome. Just the fact that you typed, I can't speak tea and crumpets, tells me that you're a direct dude, man. You don't care. Like, here's the deal. Like, I think it's funny, and I shouldn't be laughing. I shouldn't be laughing because somebody in here could legitimately take that as being offensive. Like Jocko's wife, if she was on here, she might take that as being offensive. But anyways, so John, here's the deal. Perspective, like Codey said, is your perspective is flawed. And you're sitting here saying, I communicate respectfully and directly, but they consider direct statements as scary. Well, the problem is you're speaking directly. As a leader, we want to be as indirect as possible to avoid any conflict. Plus, if I'm speaking indirectly, it allows the people around me to gain ownership and take ownership over the solutions as we're working through things. If I was to tell Codey to do something instead of ask him, hey, what do you think we should be doing on this? Hey, Codey, so it's, for an example, when we got to Ramadi, our leadership went to the soldiers and Marines and started building a relationship and started asking them, like, hey, what do you guys have going on? Okay, cool. And they learned about the scenario and said, is there anything that we can do to help? Here's our capabilities. We have snipers, we have machine gunners, we're well-trained gunfighters in general. Like, do you need us patrolling the streets? Do you need us setting up overwatches? Here's the deal. Jocko could have said, hey, I have snipers and machine gunners. We're going to patrol the streets and help you guys clear from building to building, alleyway to alleyway, because you're a bunch of National Guardsmen and you don't have the training we have. And I'm going to put my snipers up on the high ground to protect you guys while you guys are patrolling through the streets. This is what we're going to do. If he would have been direct but respectful, how do you think that relationship would have been? It wouldn't have been as good. Instead, Jocko did exactly what I just demonstrated before that example. And they said, hey, what do you guys have going on? What is your mission? They're asking questions. And when I'm asking somebody a question and I'm listening to what they're saying, I'm showing them respect. And if I want somebody to respect me, I have to show them respect. If I want somebody to listen to me, I have to listen to them. If I want somebody to trust me, I have to show them trust. And if I want to be able to influence the people around me, I have to allow them to influence me. And that's your ultimate goal, John, is to get them to feel like they are influencing you, because they actually are. When you're asking them, hey, what do you think? What about this? And you're getting their insight and their ideas, and understanding that tone, tact, and delivery is very important. And as a leader, you've got to be a chameleon. So I suggest you learn how to speak in tea and crumpets so that you can build that relationship, and that you can sit down and understand what they're working through, so that you can help them solve their problems based off of your phenomenal skill sets and abilities. Think about it this way, John. If you don't build the relationship, if you don't establish trust, and you guys don't have a good working relationship, you are failing them, because they are not going to understand the value that you bring to helping them. And I know you bring a lot of value. So you have to look at it from a different perspective, a different lens. How do I allow them to influence me so that I can add my skill sets to what they're doing to help the team win overall? It's hard, man. I get it. I understand. Like Codey said, can be an aggressive person. And okay, maybe a lot of the time. And I have to be very mindful of how I communicate to people. I have to be mindful of my text messages. I have to be mindful of my body language, my facial expressions. These are things that I'm constantly working on, brother. And it's something that you can work on as well. And here's the last thing I'll end with this. And I know we're over time. The last thing I'll say, there's only two measures that matter: effective and ineffective. You're either a good communicator or you're not. You're either building a relationship or you're not. You're either establishing trust or you're not. And so if you're not building a relationship, if you're not establishing trust, if they're not respecting you, if they don't understand your capabilities, and if they think you're scary, you're failing. And if you could really subordinate your ego and understand that humility is the number one characteristic of a great leader, which, given your background, I know you know that, brother. I know you know humility is the number one characteristic of a great leader. So when you can remind yourself, like, hey, humility, 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 and detach from your emotions and say, you know what, I don't want people to think I'm scary when they're interacting with me, but I want them to know I'm scary with my capabilities of helping them. That's the goal. I want people to look at me as an asset and not a liability. So just something to think about. I appreciate, one, your former service and what you're doing currently. And to all the first responders, to all the military that are, current and, from the past and even in the future, we appreciate everything that you guys do. Codey, this is a great webinar. I appreciate you setting this up and making it happen, and allowing me to have a break from moving all the heavy shit. So thank you, buddy.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And again, I know we're 3 minutes over. Last thing I'll state, one, thank you guys for joining today. There will be a follow-up email with this recording. It's going to be on YouTube as well. So if you want to rewatch, or if you missed something or you want to pass it on, it will be there for you. Last thing I'll say is, I opened with this at the beginning. Stress, we see it as unique, but it's universal. Everybody faces some sort of stress. The nice part about that is there are answers to help us navigate stress. And those are the resources that we talked about today. It's the stuff we teach at Echelon Front. It's the knowledge that you can gain. It's the skills, or it's the experience that you can go through. The biggest resources we have at Echelon Front are the things that we teach. So whether you guys follow up, I know this is a free session. We have the Academy, which is very similar to this Q&A format with topics. We have the FTX stuff. Stand by in that email for a little surprise on the FTX program. I won't give too much away, but the answers are there. Now it's a matter of us getting up out of our own way, removing that ego to understand that, hey, I don't have it all figured out. I can be better in a stressful situation. The answers are right there. We can't do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. So take a chance. Hey, take a leap, raise your hand, seek out something new so you can fight handling these stressful situations. Again, thank you guys for today. Looking forward to talking to you guys in the future, and best of luck with